Clive Davis died just days ago, and this is a man that created and controlled the careers of some of the biggest names in the music industry. But here's the thing. There are rumors that Clive wasn't just a music mogul, and instead was using his influence to pressure these artists into doing what he wanted. His biggest artists died in mysterious ways or had their careers snubbed, the second they tried to get away from him, and people are wondering if all that was really a coincidence.
We have some breaking news coming into the newsroom right now. The entertainment industry mourning the life of the iconic record producer and music giant Clive Davis. We have just confirmed that he's passed away. The music visionary behind so many popular sounds across the last 6 decades, discovering and championing some of the biggest names in the industry, including Whitney Houston, Alicia Keys, Barry Manilow, Jennifer Hudson. He was 94 years old.
Perhaps the biggest name in Clive's catalog was Whitney Houston. At the peak of her career, Whitney was pulling in millions of dollars, and that's when fans realized that something was wrong. Reports came out that Whitney was addicted to and had a history of being a both in her childhood and during her time in the industry. Whitney never revealed the name of the person who had her, but it was because of this trauma that she started using drugs.
Perhaps the film's biggest revelation, Whitney was allegedly sexually molested as a child. Pat says Whitney never told her who abused her, but that she did talk about the alleged experience.
Did you know?
We talked about it, but it was referencing my daughter. You know, we would travel with work. We would argue about me leaving Rhea behind. And I never could understood why she was so adamant about her being on the road with us. And that's when she talked to me very briefly, about her situation. And I understood at that point and just let it go.
I suspected that there was some kind of trauma in her childhood just because of the way she acted, the way she talked in some interviews about her childhood and about how she felt about children, how she wanted to protect children.
Then in 2001, things got even worse. Whitney was battling addiction, and this was the first time that the public found out. During the Michael Jackson 30th anniversary special concert at Madison Square Garden, which took place on September 7th and 10th, 2001, Whitney Houston performed at the tribute event, and her appearance sparked widespread public concern. Houston looked notably gaunt and thin, and her performance was seen by many as erratic. It became one of the most talked about moments people point to as an early public sign of her struggles with addiction, well before she spoke about it openly in her 2002 Diane Sawyer interview.
Never able to talk about it to her mother or to a professional who was trying to help her perhaps with her addiction. She did a lot of therapy and that kind of thing, but she would never open up about this to anyone.
The film also revealing the shocking extent of the drug abuse of the chart-topping legend.
Her drug of choice was?
She used and she drank.
The family's roots began on the mean streets of Newark, New Jersey. Gary says hard drugs were a part of his life from an early age.
I've been turned on to at 10 years old. At 10 years old.
10 years old.
Yeah, and I did with Whitney, from time to time, but we were in a different room. I never did with her, me and her together, because it would kind of separate us and distance us.
I could tell you that I am not self-destructive. I'm not a person who wants to die. I'm a person who has life and wants to live.
Despite knowing how sick Whitney was and how much she needed help, Clive continuously pushed her to perform and stay in the industry. In his own words, Clive was the only person that Whitney trusted, and he misused that trust. He would send her into interviews just to generate controversy, and not one person around her cared. Not her family and not her friends. Whitney was clearly in need of help, but everyone only cared about the money.
Are you just watching TV?
You're just,
and doing?
Yeah. You put it in your mouth, Oprah. Okay. Go with me here.
Okay, go. I'm going with you.
You put it in your mouth, you lace it, you roll it up, and you smoke it, and you're weed. It's just another form. It's like, almost like when speedballing, but you level it off with a.
Okay.
Okay.
So your drug of choice was weed combined with
rock cocaine.
With rock.
Yes.
Things continued to get worse until one day Whitney allegedly met Clive Davis in his office and told him that she wanted to get help and she was going to quit everything for her daughter. She also stated that she wanted to release more music and get back on the stage. Just 1 month after this conversation on February 11, 2012, at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills, California, on the eve of a pre-Grammy party, Whitney was found.
was pulled from the bathtub.
She was found face down in a water-filled bathtub with bugs nearby. So what happened to that now infamous hotel room here at the Beverly Hilton? Whitney Houston was an icon with such a huge following. You'd think that room might become a magnet for tourists. But the hotel made sure that didn't happen.
This one is where she actually died in. Notice they took the number off the door.
In this YouTube video, a fan searches for Houston's room weeks after her death and discovers the number 434 has been removed. The $500 a night suite that looked much like this one was reportedly taken out of rotation after the hotel was overwhelmed by requests from guests to stay there. But look what our producer found this week.
434.
The number 434 is back. The Beverly Hilton told us, out of respect to the family and fans of Whitney, all original contents and furnishings of the guest room where she stayed were removed, and the space has been thoroughly refreshed.
And here's where the story takes a completely shocking turn. While Whitney was dead in her bathroom and EMS was getting ready to transport her body, Clive Davis was downstairs partying. Everyone at that party knew that Whitney Houston was dead just a few floors up, but they continued to party. In the words of Shaka Khan, it was insanity.
You were, I think, going to go to the Clive Davis party.
Yes.
It was a surreal event where Whitney's body was still in the hotel, and there was this sort of party where apparently half the room were in tears, the other half were kind of partying. What did you feel about that?
I thought that was complete insanity. And knowing Whitney, I don't believe that she would have said, the show must go on. She was the kind of woman that would say, stop everything. I'm not going to be there. You know. I don't know what could motivate a person to have a party in a building where the person whose life he had influenced so enormously and whose life had been affected by her. So they were like, I don't understand how that party went on.
I had Clive Davis by pure chance in here on Friday night with Jennifer Hudson, and he obviously worshipped Whitney, and I think he must have gone through agony when he heard this news, knowing it was 2 or 3 hours till this event.
Right.
And I think he took the decision to turn it into a tribute to her. And I understand that. I mean, he obviously was wrestling with the right thing to do.
That would have been right if it really was a true tribute, and and a true tribute, might have been a more honest tribute in my opinion, would have been maybe call everybody together, let's say a prayer, and let's eat dinner and go home.
When Clive was questioned over it, he said that it was actually a tribute to Whitney. Keep in mind that this is the same person who claimed to care about Whitney, and was the only one who knew that Whitney was planning to come back and be sober. Clive's behavior here is extremely suspicious, and the way he talks about it is unbelievable.
I've made it no secret that I just thought it was in poor taste for you to continue with the pre-Grammy party when Whitney's body was still upstairs in the hotel room. Remember, Whitney passed away the same day as Clive, your annual party. Why did you go on and have the party? Just asking.
Well, you're a very small minority, because if you knew Whitney better, you knew she was not there to perform.
Yeah.
This was her favorite night of the year. She came out every year. This party was so part of her.
So you're saying that she
so that the family, we spoke to representatives of Pat, who was a manager, and Gary, who was her brother.
Her body was still upstairs.
But we dedicated the evening. Whitney would have wanted this party to go on any more than the Grammys should stop. There was a packed house paying tribute. Alicia performed, Tony Bennett, Diana Krall, the Kinks had flown in from Europe, Elvis Costello, Jackson Brown, Diana Ross, Jamie Foxx. Everybody celebrated the life, the memory. That was appropriate, so I beg to differ with you.
Well, we agree to disagree, and that's fine.
It's not just the fact that he chose to party after Whitney died that's suspicious. Hours before her death, Whitney actually passed a note to Brandy Norwood, her close friend. Brandy and Monica were rehearsing doing press for Clive Davis pre-Grammy gala performing The Boy Is Mine. Whitney showed up unexpectedly, and after their interviews, she quietly slipped Brandy a note and kissed her cheek, saying, "This is for you." Allegedly, in this note, she revealed that someone was after her.
He discovered many artists, signed many artists, among them Sean Diddy Combs, Kelly Clarkson, who it is your exclusive, will not attend Clive Davis's funeral.
Yeah, she
wasn't there. Now, here's what the mainstream media will not report about Clive Davis, but it's well known in the music industry that he was a bad guy. And it's well known in the music industry that he reportedly, allegedly made Sean Combs perform with him sexually in order to get a record deal. Page 6 reporting that Suge Knight, who I believe is still in prison, himself names powerful music execs who allegedly used drugs, alcohol, and sex to control Diddy, Usher, and Justin Bieber. Suge Knight is the former Death Row Records CEO. He's serving 28 years behind bars for running over and killing a man. Told News Nation that his artists used to only smoke weed, but allegedly got into heavier drugs once they were signed. Those guys, Knight said, introduced cocaine to I find it hard to believe that the first time they got introduced to cocaine was by the likes of Clive Davis. But you know, this is the sinister side of the music industry. That nobody wants to discuss openly. And you'll read an obit of Clive Davis in the New York Times, and it'll just be what a genius he was and how many lives he changed and stars he midwifed. And it's like, no, tell the truth. We are allegedly post Me Too. Why are we not telling the truth, Rob?
Tell the whole story here. And it's a really dark story to tell, but it makes it more interesting. This story is a story about being a human being, and we're messy. People are messy. And whenever you try to make somebody a hero, whether it be a friend or a movie star, you're not doing them any favors. None of us are heroes. Clive, in my opinion, was a particularly bad person. You know, early in my career, I worked with Puffy, and Clive was around a lot. There would be no Puffy had there not been Clive. Clive founded Bad Boy Records. Bad Boy Records was under Arista Records. It was Clive Davis, who was an elderly man who had not had a hit in years and was desperate to be relevant. And so he found this up-and-coming black hip-hop gentleman that he thought he could be in business with. He could control. So many people gave Diddy that advantage, including Anna Wintour and Estee Lauder. He was the black man in a white world that they thought they could trust. And boy, did they bet on the wrong horse. But there would be no Diddy without Clive.
And then there's the autopsy report, which says that Whitney died from a drug overdose and water in her lungs. This doesn't make any sense, since Whitney's face wasn't even underwater when she was found.
The water in her lungs and that kind of thing that would indicate drowning.
Well, you know, one of the things, there's no camera there, so we don't know exactly what happened. And these pathologists, I don't really envy them, have to try to piece together this story. So you get water in your lungs if you're breathing. So how did she get water in her lungs? Well, she either had a heart attack and slipped into the water, and she still had a few breaths, and in they came, or she blacked out. Maybe she was unconscious because of a combination of the cocaine and these other medications, which they're saying did not contribute.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. And among those other medications, Xanax, which we've talked about recently on this program, Benadryl, something called Flexeril, and they said specifically these other drugs did not contribute to her death. Right. How do you know, I mean, as a pathologist, you're the coroner, you're looking at it, that they didn't play any role?
I spoke to one of the assistants in the coroner's office last night who was part of this investigation. I specifically asked that question. You have Flexeril, which is a muscle it relaxes your muscles. Xanax, which is anti-anxiety. You have Benadryl, which is an antihistamine. Each one of these can kind of space you out a little bit. And then all together, they can have an effect. Now, he specifically said, and this is a new information that he told me last night, that the levels of those were either therapeutic or subtherapeutic. But then I said to him, okay, fine, they're therapeutic, but then in combination, can't they have an additive effect? He said, well, we're going to have to wait 2 weeks to see what the final report shows about that.
So maybe it's not 100% that they didn't contribute.
Well, they're saying they didn't contribute. And the last thing they need is some doctor 3,000 miles away second guessing them.
The way Clive acts like he wasn't surprised at all by Whitney's death and continued to party is what makes everyone so mad. In an interview, Clive completely changed up what he had previously said and claimed that he was actually worried about Whitney. And Whitney had in fact listened to him and said that he would get clean. This means that Clive knew that Whitney was off and trying hard to stay sober. If he knew that, then why wasn't he surprised over the news of her? Some people, including Bishop Larry Gators, actually blame Clive for Whitney's death and claim that he's the person that arranged it. He gave her access to drugs and planted the evidence. This is why the autopsy report doesn't match up with what investigators saw at the scene.
1995 meeting in Beverly Hills in the home of Clive Davis, who was responsible for the murder of Whitney Houston. I said it. His days are numbered. And there were rappers there from all over the country. They were invited to the home of Clive Davis, along with members of the CIA, FBI, which they didn't understand why the government was there, including many directors and CEOs of the private prisons throughout the United States was at that meeting in the mansion of Clive Davis. And they were telling these rappers, you need to create songs talking about killing police, calling black women bees and hoes. You need to get more nasty so we can fill our prisons that we're building. Okay.
You know what's crazy during that time? I can recall when that gangster music came into play.
That's it.
And how they, you know, I don't know if the guys rapping it really knew, but they created the atmosphere.
Yes.
But it went from, I remember guys wanting to wear like the African chains around their neck,
Yes.
and dancing, and the haircuts, flat tops, Kid and Play,
Flat top, yeah.
Kwame, to the really thugged out and
Yes.
just the gang stuff. And I can recall going into like liquor stores or different places, and all they had was blue and red rags.
Right.
It was just like that stuff was on program.
Things get even weirder once you realize that Whitney's daughter died in the exact same way decades later. Whitney Houston's daughter, Bobby Christina Brown, died on July 26, 2015 at age 22, almost exactly 3.5 years after her mother. On January 31, 2015, she was found unresponsive and face down in a bathtub at her home in Roswell, Georgia in circumstances eerily similar to her mother's death. She was rushed to the hospital and placed in a medically induced coma, but she never regained consciousness. She remained in that state for about 6 months before she died.
There are a lot of people out there that don't understand how hard you fought to help Chrissy, to keep her here on this earth.
When we really found out that Chrissy was in trouble, we were really making plans to do something about it, but it just came a little too late.
She was like a second mother to Bobby Christina, Whitney's manager, confidant, and sister-in-law, who was with her 3 days before she died. Pat had planned an intervention for Chrissy and wanted to send her to rehab in California, but then...
What happened to Bobby Christina Brown?
After being found unresponsive in the bathtub.
She is breathing with a ventilator.
Court papers claim Nick Gordon injected Chrissy with a toxic mixture before she was found face down in the bathtub. Today, Nick remains in hiding, and many question if he had a role in her death. Pat always had her doubts and even filed a restraining order against Nick last year.
Chaka Khan is perhaps the only one who knew Whitney closely and cared about her, and she has always blamed Clive Davis for what happened. Allegedly, Whitney never even planned to be at the party that got her. It was all planned last minute by you-know-who.
Yeah, and frustration, emotion, and stress. You know, that will really affect you profoundly. If you're in a stress situation, she was being pulled.
Yeah.
In a way that
it would wear down anybody.
It would,
especially with, you know, trying to do the reality show and keep, you know, Bobby at a certain level. Weren't you on your way to Clive's party?
She's been in town for a week, and I missed her because I've been on the road. So when I got back, you know, while I was out there, I was seeing all the crap that that was happening to her, and she was because before she came down to do this fucking party, she was up in Canada shooting a movie. She's doing a great job, doing a beautiful job, soberly, but well. She had her wits about her. She was in a great place. Then somebody calls her down to do a party, and who calls you in to do anything a week before it's happening, unless you're going to be doing rehearsals or something. If I'm going to come to your party, and even if you in Houston, I would just fly down the day of, a night before, go to the party, maybe stay a couple days if I wanted to afterwards, and then go back home. That's what killed her. I will tell you right now. The fact that she came down a whole 7 days before the party with nothing in place to keep her or to insulate her from.
And she just ran amok.
It stressed her too. She was friggin' stressed. She felt compelled to be there for Clive. You know, she felt compelled, you know, to be there.
You had a good relationship with Bobby Chris too, isn't that right?
Yes.
So this is just tragic all around, right?
Yes,
To
yes.
your friend and their child. And how did
The
that
only
affect
consolation
you?
I get in that, you know, is that I know that they are in a better place. I know they're together.
Yeah.
And they're happy now.
Whitney isn't the only celebrity that has had to suffer at the hands of Clive Davis. A lot of stars refused to be present at his funeral because they knew exactly what kind of man he was. The coincidences don't end here. Clive Davis is connected to Diddy, too. And according to Gene Deal, Diddy's bodyguard, Clive is the person that turned Diddy into the monster that he is today. Clive's parties were the blueprint for the That Got Diddy sent behind bars.
So the relationship between Clive Davis and Diddy is interesting because when Diddy's 23 years old, he's making a name for himself. Clive gave him $15 million to start Bad Boy Records. And then later on, they did even a bigger deal where Clive gave him $50 million advance on future earnings. This is 5 years later in 1998. $6 million upfront payment, $700,000 annual salary, and a state-of-the-art recording studio. We're talking about $2 million recording studio. This is when he went after Faith Evans. He got Biggie in the early 90s. This is when it started. But there's a relationship with Clive. And it's interesting because Clive later on, they say something may have happened here because Shook said Clive taught him the bad habits. And later on, Clive comes out and says the following. Yes, record mogul Clive Davis has identified as being bisexual. He publicly revealed in his memoir, this is not allegedly, he said it, the soundtrack of my life. At the age of 80, he also discussed in an interview with Katie Couric, expressing the hope that his coming out would contribute to greater understanding of bisexuality. It's Clive Davis.
The public hasn't been on Davis's side for a long time either. Everyone blames him for Whitney's death, or at least thinks it's suspicious how he basically was unfazed and continued to party as someone who called him father was breathing their last breath. As new details and reflections continue to surface, one thing remains certain: her legacy as the voice will never fade. Music, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, share it with someone who grew up on Whitney's music, and subscribe for more.